Father McFarland, welcome back for another fun episode of Vocations Talk.
Thanks, Andrew. Happy to be here.
It's like car talk, except spiritual.
No, we're not taking callers either. All right.
No, that's fair.
My vocation is making this noise. Dut, 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 dut.
And we don't have obnoxious East Coast accents. We could try. No, we won't.
I have a little bit of one.
A little bit. It's not too bad.
Thanks.
All right, so episode 4, we are talking about, we're calling this episode, at least in theory as we're starting this, we're calling this the toxic culture of deciding on a state in life. What makes this toxic? What is it about this whole process that you think is toxic, Father, and that you'd like to correct?
What's toxic about it is that the whole mentality is wrong, as we've mentioned numerous times in the course of this. But what should be a process of making a decision becomes a process of trying to figure something out that we can't figure out. And so, as we said, there's all sorts of bad advice and ridiculous things that people say that oftentimes end up preventing someone who is perfectly qualified from pursuing the priesthood or religious life. And toxic is a good word in that sense, and that we sort of poison the possibility of this person giving himself completely to God in a state of consecrated life.
Okay. Well, we are going to go through some of your more contested ideas or ideas that you don't like a little bit later on here in this episode. Mm-hmm. But first, let's talk about the right way of choosing the state in life that you should be doing as an individual. This is often called the process of discernment. And you said right before we started recording, you don't like the term discernment for this. Why is that, Father? Because
discernment, we spiritually use discernment for example, for the discernment of spirits. So to figure out, is this movement taking place in my soul, coming from God, coming from my own natural inclinations, or coming from the devil? With the thought of pursuing consecrated life, there's no risk of deception. It can't be a bad thing to want to give yourself completely to God. And the same is the example I've often used of making the decision to go to Mass every day or receive communion every day. Right? That we don't have to worry about being deceived there, because the thing itself is good. And, St. Thomas goes so far as to say that if the devil convinced us to pursue religious life, we still don't need to worry about it because he's convinced us to do something good, which is St. Thomas's point, of course, is he's not going to try to get us to pursue religious life. He's going to try to convince us not to, and use whatever means are at his disposal in order to do so. So it's not as if we have to figure out if this is going to be a good thing. We are going to have to apply certain tests to ourselves in terms of, okay, I know what the impediments are. Are there any impediments? Is there really anything that's keeping me from that? But those things are going to be obvious. There's not a process of discernment that has to happen whereby I, come to that knowledge. It's just the application of these impediments to myself. Do I fall under any of these?
Okay. So let's go through. I'm just going to ask you kind of a series of questions here, Father, on this topic. You said, it's not really discernment, but in an Ignatian retreat, you do go through the process of learning how to discern whether things come from good or for evil. So oftentimes people will go on a retreat before they're about to make a big decision. You yourself host Vocations Retreat. So how does that process fit in?
In the Ignatian exercises, St. Ignatius has a whole section on the choice of a way of life. And that word choice is used repeatedly. And so what he's trying to get the retreatant to do is to take what's most important, what St. Ignatius calls the principle and foundation, that man is created to praise, reverence, and serve God our Lord, and by this means save his soul, and that all the other things in the face of the earth are to help man to the attainment of this end. And then apply that to himself in his current place in life, and then make a decision about what he has to do to give himself as completely as possible to God. And so what he's trying to do is to get you to really think about, okay, I really am made just for my salvation and the glory of God. There shouldn't really be any other consideration right now. What's the way that I can be most pleasing to God? And his ways of making a choice of a way of life are to help you to do that. So to be as generous as possible in the light of this principle. So we're acting based on faith with the greatest possible generosity. And I maintain that what St. Ignatius is trying to do is to get as many people as possible to enter religious life, quite frankly. And he is, and he talks about the choice. The word keeps coming back. He talks about discernment elsewhere in the discernment of spirits. He doesn't talk about it in when he's going through these methods of making a choice of a way of life.
Interesting. Is it possible, Father, to quote unquote, miss your vocation? Is someone better suited objectively, and we've kind of already answered this, I think, in episode 1, better suited to the priesthood or the married life, and is that an objective thing and they've missed it and they will lack something later on in their life because of a missed choice?
On the natural level, you could say that there is perhaps a certain more of a inclination in a particular direction, or you might say this person has talents that would suit him well in the priesthood or in this particular sort of religious life. But it's not a question of the application of your natural talents, and that this person is clearly more set up to be a priest, so he should be a priest. This one clearly more to be a husband or father. I know plenty of priests who, had they chosen to go a different direction, would have made great fathers, and plenty of fathers who had chosen to go a different direction would have made great priests. So it's certainly not that. And then is it again, is there a thing that I have that I can only do that, and otherwise I'm that fish out of water in the wrong place, struggling to save my soul? No, not if there are no impediments, then you and the religious congregation will take you, then go ahead. And there, our vices are vices in religious life or in secular life. Our vices are vices in the priesthood or in lay life, and likewise for our virtues. So we all have those things that we struggle with, and those things that we're good at, and wherever we are, those are going to be our strengths and our weaknesses.
Is there a proper way to choose? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was like, so no, it's not a matter of missing a vocation. It's possible for someone to have made that decision knowingly to be less generous, and that's not a good thing.
Right.
But it's also not like, well, now you're pretty much hosed for the rest of your life. You made your bed, sleep in it. It's not that either. You can still have a fruitful Catholic life and save your soul, even if you at the moment of making the decision, you were not as generous as you could have been.
Sure. Is there a particular process for a right way to go about choosing a state in life? Do you need a spiritual director to help you make this decision? Or if after watching this series of podcasts, you go, I got it?
Yeah, a spiritual director would not be a strict requirement. It can be very helpful as long as it's someone who's going to, help you to move in that direction of being generous. And that's what, I think that's St. Thomas again, that we shouldn't take a whole lot of counsel on the subject of entering religious life, because our Lord has counseled it, and we should only ask advice from people we know are going to encourage us. So we see what St. Thomas thinks about it pretty clearly. So it can help, and certainly the more we're focused on the supernatural, the more we're living a fervent spiritual life, the more we're going to have that support of grace, the more the making of this decision is going to make sense to us, and it will help us to be generous.
Okay. Next question I have: is there such a thing as a vocation oracle? That is, a priest or someone else who can just tell, "I know you have a vocation. You've got it." And if someone says that to you, what should you think if you're a young man, young lady, and someone says that to you?
I don't think it exists, because I don't think there's a thing that you have or don't have. Are there those rare individuals who have the certain prophetical gifts from God, where they might see that it's particularly important for your salvation or for the good of the church to enter a state of consecrated life, or maybe even to avoid one. Sure, that's possible. But I think in most cases, if somebody tells you that, you say, oh, okay, thanks, and then try to make a decision based on sound principles. Very often, there's this desire among the candidates to just have that very clear answer, and someone who's just giving categorical statements can seem very appealing, especially if that's a person of authority like a priest or a religious. But I don't think that in 99% of the cases that's solidly grounded. And I wish people would stop doing that. And very
Fair
often
enough.
it's the opposite case. Like, no, not for you. Well, why not? It seems that I don't have any impediments. Nope, I know. I have experience in these matters, or I know these things, or not you. And I have seen cases where people who have been told that, even by priests, have gone on to be religious, and it's been fine, and better than fine. An excellent thing.
Okay.
So it comes down to, it really is a decision that each person has to make for himself. Right? And that's the way that God wants it. Unless God gives you some extraordinary manifestation to show that if you encountered a Padre Pio or someone like that who has there's clear evidence that he is speaking with the authority of God, then by all means listen to him. Or if God is working miracles, other extraordinary signs to indicate some direction to you, that's different. But if it's just somebody who thinks they always know, don't take that too seriously. That's my advice.
Okay. So last question I have, kind of in this subset of the decision-making process. What about parents? Can you speak to parents for a moment, Father, about how best to assist their teenage, young adult children, or even younger, along this process? Are there things that they should or shouldn't do, or are there things that they should be doing to help with this whole process?
Well, the thing that's most helpful is not just something that you kind of super add to what you've done for your children at the end of their childhood as they're making this decision, but that you've lived and helped them to live and taught them the ways of a fervent Catholic life. That you've shown respect for priests and for religious, that you've always presented this as an ideal of something worth doing, something worth pursuing, that they've had exposure to priests and religious, so it's not such a distant and foreign thing. That's the most important aspect. And likewise, encouraging them to a real spiritual life throughout their childhood, and to teach them from their earliest days the spirit of self-sacrifice, which is so essential to the gift of oneself. And those are the big things. So it's a process that begins when the child is born, basically. Mm-hmm. But as they're approaching that decision, you don't want, as a parent, to push or to be the one who's deciding for them. Really, you really need to think about the priesthood. You would be a fine priest, and I think you should be a priest. And then Billy ends up going because mom wants him to go, and to get mom off his back, he stays for 3 months and then comes home. Not ever really taking it seriously because it wasn't his own decision. You have to leave him free to make that decision for himself. It can't be something that he's pushed into. Likewise, parents need to not discourage their children's interest in the priesthood of the religious life. And this can happen for a number of reasons. And sometimes it's because of a sentimental attachment of the parents to the children. They want them around in their later years and don't want them locked up in a convent or sent off to foreign mission countries or what have you. Or they want those grandkids and as many as possible and as soon as possible. Or it may be the case of, well, this, of all my children, the one who's interested doesn't seem like a very promising candidate. You can't even clean up your own room. You think you can be a priest? And that pouring cold water on a young person's generosity does a lot of damage. And you don't, I think some people think of vocations as something that needs to be tried and tested. Don't worry, it will be. We don't need to add tests to that, especially in the modern world. Before entering the life at the seminary or in the novitiate, living the life as a priest or as a professed religious, there will be those temptations. There will be those trials. Don't worry. We don't need to add to them. I think of it as being like a little flame that you need to protect and to build, to feed the fuel to it, to encourage it so that it can grow, so that it can survive on its own. And, even just a little breath of discouragement, of opposition can blow that flame out. And I know for myself, at the time that I was considering entering the seminary, I was dragging my feet doing it. I wasn't very enthusiastic. I thought I'd have my life all figured out. And if there had been somebody who said, no, I would have said, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, but then you just gave me all the permission I needed.
Yes. And then I wouldn't be where I am today, which is, I get to hold God in my hands every morning. I would have missed out on a great deal. So even if they're not a great candidate, apparently, there have been plenty of us who were absolute schlubs at the age of 16 who more or less got it figured out and were banged into shape to make respectable priests, to say, that's a great idea. That's a very noble ambition. Recognize that you have some things you need to work on if that's what you want to do. You need to try harder at school. You need to be more dedicated to your responsibilities. Prepare yourself now. Get ready. So we can certainly encourage them to improve themselves, but not to discourage the vocation. And you have it too with but you'd be such a great father, you'd be such a great mother. Don't do that. They might be, but we have to remember it's a matter of faith that the call to consecrated life is higher, and we have to be ready to make that gift of our children as they have to be ready to make that gift of themselves.
As a parent with teenage kids myself, I know personally it is hard to let go. It's hard to just let them go and make their own horrible decisions that they make sometimes. And I can understand how maybe a parent would say, you've got to do this. I see it in you because you do know your kids. You know them well. Or as a parent, you go, hey, you give me grandkids, right? Both of those are pretty bad ideas. You've got to let go.
Yep. And to encourage, to advise, but not to let it be your decision.
Right. Well, let's talk about once a candidate has entered the seminary, novitiate, convent, whatever. What happens if someone is asked to leave? Sometimes it probably feels to a candidate that this is a feeling of rejection, like the priesthood didn't want me or the religious life didn't want me. What does that mean, and how does that happen sometimes?
Well, it can happen for any number of reasons. There can be questions of health. There can be moral problems. There can be apparent lack of affinity for the life, like it's just not working. With the priesthood, a failure to attain the qualifications. The candidate's been here a few years. His grades are poor, or he's not maturing, or he's difficult in community life, and so there would be a feeling of rejection is normal, but we have to see that too as God has manifested His will to me. I made the offering of myself, the gift of myself. If I did everything I could, if I gave it, put my whole heart into it, gave it my all, then I have nothing to regret. It just didn't work out. It also does not mean that one cannot try to pursue the religious life elsewhere. That does happen. In a particular congregation is just not the right fit. It doesn't. No one can tell you you're not suited for the religious life anywhere unless there's a canonical impediment. They can tell you. In that case, they can tell you. if otherwise you can, whatever your quirks, foibles, and failings may be, you're permitted to try elsewhere. And really, there's not even a cap on the number of times you could try. But probably, if you've already been turned away from 6 convents, the other convents are going to be like, okay, why? And be a little reluctant to take a chance on you. And at that point, most people will be saying, okay, it just looks like it's not for me. But as devastating as that may be, and if you gave it your all, it does not mean God doesn't want you, but you have to look for where you can serve Him with with your abilities and capacities if it didn't work out in the priesthood or religious life.
Could you talk a little bit, maybe, Father, about this kind of probably fine line once you are in the seminary or the religious house? It must be a total change to go from living in the world to going into a religious house, and there must be difficulties and challenges to do that. How do you know whether to persevere and move forward through those difficulties, or maybe that's indications that you are just not suited for that life? How do you continue to make that choice, or to make the choice to leave once you are in the religious house or seminary?
It's actually pretty simple, and that is you just stay. And if you're not supposed to be there, the people who are in charge of letting you know that you're not supposed to be there will tell you to leave. Right. So I think the best thing for a candidate to do entering a novitiate or the seminary is to just stop thinking about whether they should be there. I made the decision. I'm giving myself. Unless the situation changes where it becomes manifestly clear that I cannot pursue my resolution to serve God here, and then one should stay. So when is that going to be the case? When obedience tells you to go, or if there's some, corruption of the life, the seminary gets infected by modernism, or the religious congregation seems to be abandoning the traditional faith, or things like that. So it's really not complicated, and the less the candidates think about it, the better, quite frankly. Because are you giving yourself, or are you going with this, introspective, I'm going to see how I feel from day to day and if I like it or not? And that's opening the door to the devil playing on your feelings and getting you to leave. So if you're not supposed to be there, as long as you're open with your superiors, your spiritual director in particular, and you're putting forth your best effort, if you're not supposed to be there, they'll let you know. That's what the whole process is for. That's why we have a novitiate and temporary vows. That's why we have a seminary that lasts for years before you're definitively committed to that life as a priest. It's so they can make that determination. You've already decided to do it. So you're doing it, and then they tell you if you can or not. Of course, you're free to quit, but unless your motivation changes, why would you quit? So as long as that motivation is what you want to do is serve God and save your soul, stay where you are.
That's great advice. All right, so I'm going to say about 5 or 6 different quotes of things that I have heard or you have heard in the past. And after each quote, I'm just going to let you talk. This is the part where you get to rant about stuff, Father. This is a section called Typical Vocation Misunderstandings. And we could come up with a more colorful title than that, but that's what we got right now. All right. Quote, you should get to know the world so that you know... you should get to know the world so that you know what you're giving up.
That's ridiculous. Why would you, again, you're nourishing that flame. Why would you all right, now I'm going to take it out into the rain. And it's contrary to the practice of the church throughout the centuries, which generally was, get them in as soon as possible. To protect them from that influence of the world. We want to avoid the spirit of the world, but also, we're not, trying other things either. If someone says, "Hey, I'm planning to get married," no one says, "Well, go to the seminary for a couple of years first to see what you're missing out," or "Go live in a priory for a while." Or if you say, "I'm gonna, I've decided I'm gonna go to law school," well, have you tried being an airline pilot first? You got to know what you're giving up. It's ridiculous. Is this the best thing to do or not? And it's a matter of faith. It is. So why would I go tempt myself to do something lesser when I'm already thinking about doing the better thing?
Right. A subset of this argument is often XYZ person is too immature. At a 17, 18-year-old just graduating high school, they're way too immature. They need to get out and get some worldly experience first. Same thing there?
Well, it depends on the 17 or 18-year-old. It can happen that they are not yet mature enough, but still, I'm very much opposed to just throw them out there, go get a job at a fast food restaurant or work in construction or whatever. You want them to be in some kind of environment that they can be protected. So you want to make sure that they are, working, if they need to work or go to school, to do so in a situation where they have access to the sacraments, they have good Catholic friends. It's going to help them to continue along the path if they have that interest in the priesthood or religious life, not turn them aside to other things. So that's why, even we do this year in a priory now for candidates for the seminary. We do it for those who are just new to the society to get them to know us better and we can know them better, but also for those who aren't mature yet to give them that opportunity to have some experience, but they still live surrounded by priests. They have, rules for their life and that constant access to the sacraments and spiritual direction and teaching and so on, which helps to protect and nourish that desire to give themselves rather than stuffing it out.
Okay. And then I guess same sort of thing. You should get to know the world so that you can counsel such and such type person. Some sheltered little priest is not going to be able to counsel me on my big business ventures or my marriage or things like that. They need some more experience before they can even conceively know what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm. And they'll get it in the seminary and in the priesthood. You grew up real fast in the confessional. You encounter all kinds of things sure. that you didn't expect to, and and for certain things. Yeah, you wouldn't ask a priest who still has the oil wet on his hands about some of these more complicated questions, and he shouldn't be answering them as if he's got the experience. There are times where he even in the confessional he has to ask permission of the penitent. Would it be all right with you if I consulted another priest? And then you consult some priest who's far away, and then get back to that person or the like.
Okay.
But certainly we acquire a wide range of experience in our dealings with people in the confessional, out of the confessional, et cetera, that, are they going to acquire that wide range of experience in a couple of years, just working some job? Not really anyway. I'm right. Now very qualified to counsel fast food restaurant employees on their duties of state because,
Right. Right. This is a quote that you sent to me, and on the face of it, it sounds actually logical. So I'm interested. Quote, "The world needs good married people, so not everyone can become religious."
Right. Well, when it becomes a problem, we'll let you know. Saint Thomas says that those who fear to end the human race by entering religious life are like people who fear to take a drink because they think they'll dry up the river. Right. There are plenty of people getting married, plenty of good people getting married, plenty of people who got married and, without the best intentions, weren't great people who converted later on and are living fervent married life. We don't have the same need that we for good married people, the same dearth of good married people that we have for of priests and religious. The numbers are not even close, and it is the higher calling to give oneself entirely to God. So it deserves the first consideration. But really, we're never going to run out of people getting married. Right? If the human race is about to die out, and we need somebody to fall on the grenade and get married, well, we'll let you know. All right. Thank you for volunteering in advance. But I don't see it coming up anytime soon.
All right. Here's another one. Quote, "If you meet someone, a great guy, girl, Catholic, perfect, very handsome, very beautiful, whatever, all the things. Yep. This is a sign from God that you are not meant for consecrated life."
Right. That's painfully ridiculous. And it's something that In one case, a priest said to a friend of mine who is now a priest, just keep dating, and if you meet someone, that'll be the sign from God. It's amazing to me how many times after people have made the decision to pursue consecrated life, they do meet someone. And then God asks this, not just the sacrifice in the abstract of marriage, but marriage to this person whom I know and in whom I'm really interested, would like to explore building a life with this person. But no, I'm making now a more concrete sacrifice. And the problem here is putting the natural and the supernatural on the same level. We can meet people throughout our life with whom we have that great connection. But if we're already married, or if we're already in a state of consecrated life, we can't explore it then. So if we're thinking about this, it still merits the first consideration, whether there's someone in the picture or not. And if someone comes into the picture, that doesn't fundamentally change the situation. And I know plenty of priests who were seriously seeing women with the intent of getting married. I know of one even that was engaged, broke off the engagement to go to the seminary. So it's the higher state. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Last quote I've got is a little bit on the parent side again. If one or two or three of my children don't become a priest or a religious, I'm a bad mother, also known as the parental guilt syndrome. So if one of my kids' father doesn't become a priest, does that mean I'm a bad father?
Yep, total failure.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding. No, of course not. They have free will for one thing, and it's up to them to make that decision. The races are different, situations are different. Nobody has it's probably happened somewhere, but is there a family where all of the kids have, so no. So I don't know of one, except for a couple of only children. But it's not fundamentally up to the parent to decide. Okay, so what you want to do is simply give your child the best possibility exposure, right, to the priesthood, the spiritual principles, the spiritual life, the general good formation, so that they can make the decision. Right? It's an option, and they can pursue it or not. And along the same lines, just because a family has a whole bunch of religious doesn't mean that their parents are the best parents ever, or that they're saints, or we tend to judge these things superficially. But the Spirit bloweth where He will. Sometimes He draws people out of crazy situations. Even disastrous family life to consecrated life. It happens. So we don't. Again, their grace does play a role here. It's not as if we just I follow the prescriptions exactly, and precisely 1/3 of my children will end up in consecrated life. It's just not the way it works, and it shouldn't be a cause for guilt. And there might be a little natural disappointment, but not something that we should take too seriously.
Okay. Well, this has been good, Father. As we go through all of these traits, all of these misunderstandings about vocations and about choosing life, what do you think? I'll give you the floor to end. What do you think is the most, out of all these things, is the most toxic element in this whole discernment, quote unquote, culture?
Naturalism, which is the denial, either in theory or in practice, or both, of course, of the supernatural. So what happens in the toxic discernment culture is we focus in on self. It's this constant introspection. How am I feeling today? Do I want this today? Is this going to work with how I perceive my talents and my inclinations and my desires? We need to look at Jesus Christ. That's the antidote to naturalism. If we're thinking about Him, thinking about what's pleasing to Him, thinking about the eternal goods rather than our own personal, momentary, temporal good, then we're going to make a much better decision. We are, meant to take up our cross daily and follow Him, or we cannot be His disciples. And He offers us this opportunity. If thou will be perfect, Go sell what thou hast and give to the poor, and come follow me. It's not just a negative thing. Go give up this stuff that people think is important. And you think, oh, do I want to give up that stuff? No, I want to get married. I want to have my own things. I want to do what I want when I want. Come follow me. Come be my intimate friend. Come live in the closest possible association with me. He's offering you in exchange for the goods of this world, even things that are totally legitimate, himself. And that's what we have to focus on. Not think about what we're giving up, but think about what we're getting. That we are having this relationship built into our life with Jesus Christ. This consecration to him as a priest, the priestly character giving us a participation in his own priesthood, or as a religious, setting ourselves apart to belong entirely to him. Right? So that to eliminate those distractions that most people, even good people, have in the world, in order to focus entirely on him. And that's what's going to make us happy. And to think about the side of it of, what I'm giving up, that's going to, get us depressed and downcast, at least at times. But to think, for whom am I giving it up? What do I get in return? He offers me eternal life, and even before that, a special place in his sacred heart, a special love that not everybody chooses to pursue. So that's, my most basic and most essential advice in matters of vocations is look at Jesus Christ. Right? Foster that spiritual life, that daily union with him, so you're thinking about him instead of thinking about yourself. Right? If we're just thinking about self, we're not going to have the courage and the strength to overcome the obstacles that we face in pursuing a religious life or the priesthood. Right? But if we think about him, we will have that strength. We'll draw that strength from him, and he will lead us into that higher state and enable us to save our own soul and many other souls through his power and not through our own.
It's extraordinary advice, Father. Thanks. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people. So
I hope so.
Thanks for passing all this information along. Looking forward to chatting with them the next time.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the SSPX Podcast. You can find all our previous series and episodes on sspx.news. Also, don't forget to subscribe to and rate this podcast on whatever podcast app you use and on YouTube. This helps more people to discover the beauty and the truth of traditional Catholicism. And if you're able, we'd greatly appreciate your support of a one-time or a monthly recurring donation for these projects. All that information is at sspxpodcast.com. Until next time, thank you for listening, and God bless you.